Welcome to The Explainer. You know, for most of modern history, we've kind of dismissed astrology as pure mysticism, right? But what if that's a huge misunderstanding? Today, we're going to dig into a really fascinating theory that reframes the whole thing, not as magic, but as an ancient and incredibly sophisticated form of data science.
Okay, let's really sink our teeth into this because it's a massive shift in thinking. It's asking us to just for a second, forget about mysterious forces coming from the planets, and instead, think of this as a gigantic, centuries-long project in pure pattern recognition.
So the whole theory really boils down to this one super important distinction: the difference between something causing an event and something that just correlates with it.
And this, right here, is how the theory neatly dodges that classic scientific argument. You know the one, where someone says the doctor who delivered you has a stronger gravitational pull on you than Mars? Well, this model says, who cares? That doesn't matter. The planets aren't causing things to happen, any more than the hands on your watch cause it to be 4 p.m. They're just indicators. They're just hands on a giant cosmic clock.
So if you look at it this way, astrology stops being magic and starts looking more like a massive multi-generational database. Seriously, think of it like an actuary's table for personality, built by thousands of years of people meticulously logging. Okay, when the clock looked like this, these kinds of people were born, and they tended to live these kinds of lives. But okay, the second you start calling it a science, you immediately smack into a huge problem. How do you separate the real pattern, the signal, from all the random junk and interference, the noise?
See, a field like economics gets to play with hard data, like inflation rates and GDP. But the data in astrology is, well, it's fuzzy. It's stuff like personality traits or major life events. It's all very subjective, and that makes it a perfect breeding ground for at least two very famous mental traps.
First up, you've got the Barnum effect. This is that sneaky tendency for us to believe descriptions that are so general that could apply to almost anyone, like you have a great need for other people to like and admire you, but they feel deeply personally true. And if it's true for everyone, it's kind of useless for predictions.
And then you've got the big one: confirmation bias. This is our brain's habit of celebrating the wins and quietly sweeping the losses under the rug. Over centuries, practitioners could have just subconsciously remembered all the times the prediction came true, the hits, while completely forgetting all the misses. Do that for long enough, and you start to see a powerful pattern, even if there isn't one.
So how in the world could a system like this defend itself against those kinds of biases? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The argument is that the defense isn't magic. It's just an almost obsessive level of detail.
This is how it tries to fight that vagueness problem. It goes so far beyond just the 12 zodiac signs we all know. That's just level 1. The system slices the sky into 27 smaller constellations called nakshatras, and then it slices those up again into 108 tiny sections called padas. What you're left with is a super high-resolution grid for mapping personality, making the descriptions way more specific and harder to mistake for generic Barnum statements.
This just completely changes how you look at the whole practice. An ancient astrologer wasn't just mystically reading the stars. In a way, they were running a search query through a massive mental library of historical case studies, looking for the closest statistical match to the person right in front of them.
Okay, hold on. If it's all just statistical probabilities pulled from past data, what about free will? What about all the unpredictable things that make us human?
What's wild is, the system actually has variables for exactly this. They're called Rahu and Ketu, the lunar nodes. You can think of them as the system's chaos factor, its black swan variables. They're a built-in acknowledgement that sometimes things are just going to happen that defy all the known patterns.
And all this leads to a pretty dynamic formula. The probability of an outcome isn't just set in stone by the planets. It's those positions plus a variable for human will. Your conscious actions can actually amplify or fight against the statistical probabilities you were born with.
This completely flips how we might look at a concept like remedies. They're not magic spells, they're targeted behavioral changes. If your chart suggests a high probability of having a short temper, the remedy isn't a chant. It's a practice, like meditation. It's something designed to create a new feedback loop that lets you consciously override that probable outcome.
And this takes us to a really powerful and kind of paradoxical final idea. What if the entire point of understanding this whole system is to learn how to break it?
It's almost like learning the physics engine of a video game so well that you can start to master it. You learn to see the pattern coming. Ah, here comes my default autopilot reaction. You recognize it for what it is, just a statistical probability in your code, and then you consciously choose to input a different command.
And this is the real core of that ancient saying. In this model, a successful life isn't one that lines up perfectly with its predictions. It's actually the opposite. It's a life that becomes unpredictable to the model because the person has learned to take themselves off autopilot.
And that leads to the ultimate paradox, right? The system isn't a crystal ball that's meant to be 100% accurate. It's a diagnostic tool, and its greatest success isn't when it gets a prediction right, but when it gets it wrong, because that failure is proof that you saw a tendency, and you used your conscious will to create a better outcome.
So that leaves us with one last, pretty fascinating thought to chew on. In a system where the highest goal is to transcend the patterns, it seems like the whole point is to teach you how to no longer need it. It's like a map whose only real purpose is to help the traveler learn to find their own way.